welcome to Cool Camera Corner. In this brand new series I take a look at old cameras that I happen to find interesting and cool. Some of them are genuine classics and have rightfully earned their place in history. Others were just ordinary cameras that people once used every day without thinking anything of, but in all cases they can still be used today to take fantastic photographs. So without further ado, let's have a look at today's camera.
Okay, so in this episode we're going to be having a look at the Olympus XA2. This was a little camera from the 1980s. It actually came out in exactly 1980. Its predecessor was the XA, which was a rangefinder camera. All this range of cameras, and they went XA, XA1, XA2, XA3 and XA4, were designed by the famous Yoshihisa Maitani, and I do apologise for the pronunciation of that one, but he was the famous designer of the Olympus OM series and the Pen and the Pen F from Olympus as well. So this camera certainly does have pedigree, and as if you were in any doubt as to the quality of the images that this produces, if you have a look inside, and we will have to zoom in a little bit on there, you hopefully will be able to see just in there the famous name Zuiko. Now the Zuiko range of lenses was only applied to things like the OM series and the very top of the range, top of the line cameras that Olympus produced. So this little thing is not a rangefinder. The XA, the original one, was a rangefinder, and it had a little manual focus sort of lever at the bottom there, which would allow you to focus in on stuff. This one is a zone focus camera, and it has three positions on the left hand side here. So in the middle position, where you have the two little orange people, where you can see all of them including their little feet, that is the kind of default position that the camera will take pictures at, and that is from sort of 1.2 meters out to infinity. If you slide it down into the bottom position there, where you see it's kind of like, I suppose it's supposed to be portraits or something, you've just got kind of people at more or less chest height there. That's from 1.2 meters to around about sort of 1.8 meters. And if you are doing landscapes and stuff like that, then you can slide it up to the top one where that mountain is, and they say that will give you an equivalent of something like 6.3 meters out to infinity. Now, the rather nice feature about this camera, it's called a clamshell design because of the way that it slides up shut, and if you see it slides shut there, what's happening is that the little lever will default to the middle position, so that when you open it up again, it is ready for normal shooting, and that's quite a nice feature on that. Now, the other really interesting thing about these cameras, and it was on all of them that they did, was this featherlight shutter. You hardly press that at all, and it takes the picture. It's a little electric shutter in there, and so the button is very light. The idea behind having a very light shutter, I don't know if you can see that, sorry, I'm not looking at the viewfinder. So you press that and it's very, very easy to press, and the idea is that it doesn't induce any camera shake when you press the shutter button, so it makes taking crisp pictures very, very easy and smooth. Now this particular camera, unfortunately, it doesn't work. There are some issues. I paid exactly £1 sterling, one great British pound for this, which is incredibly cheap. It didn't have a battery door on it, so there was no way of testing it, but I thought for £1 I will rescue it and try and get it working again. I found this battery door on eBay, that actually cost me £7, so sort of 7 times more than the camera, but in the interests of getting the camera working, I thought that was that was worth having a go at, so I did that. But unfortunately, although some of it works, and there's a nice little battery tester on there, which you can see that works. That little beep tells you that the battery's working, and that little red light comes on the top there. But the shutter doesn't work. I don't know why exactly, but it doesn't. I've got to work that out. If you can see, this is going to be hard to show up on the video here, but inside that viewfinder there, if I cover this up, I don't know if you'll be able to get it to do it or not, but what should be happening in there, and it doesn't appear to be at the moment, but there's a little green light that will come on in the corner there to tell you, yes, there we go, you can just about, well, I can see, I don't know if you can see it in there. You'll have to take my word for it, I think, but there's a little light that will come on in there to indicate that the amount of available light is too low and you ought to use the flash, and that's being governed by this little sensor here. Flash, I hear you say, but there is not one attached. Well, the XA range of cameras actually came with two accessory flashes that were designed to come with it. This is the A11, which is the smaller of the two units, and allegedly the less powerful of the two. There was also an A16, which was supposedly more powerful, although people that have tried both actually say there really isn't that much of a discernible difference between the two. So if you have the A11, I wouldn't really recommend spending a lot of money to upgrade to the A16 unless you just happen to want it for your collection. So that just bolts on to the side of the camera there, making it into just kind of one unit. It has little connections in there which will fire the flash automatically when that little lever in there is switched over to flash. Other controls on here include the ability to set manually the ISO, or ASA as it was called in those days, just with that little slider on the top there. And that was different from the later XA3, which used DX coding to read the ISO of the film. Now, there are some people who use these cameras for street photography, for example, who are regularly pushing and pulling their film, and the fact that you can effectively use this to trick the camera into exposing more or less light onto the film gives the opportunity to effectively push or pull the camera in film. And people that were using it for street photography and applications where being able to do such things in camera is useful preferred the XA2 to the XA3. Other than that, the 2 and the 3 were pretty much identical. So the XA was a rangefinder. There was an XA1 as well, not to be confused with the original XA. That was actually just a simple mechanical camera with a selenium meter in it. There was also an XA4, which was just a distance focus camera. In other words, it would focus on everything from its close focus distance of whatever that was, round about a meter, I believe. But the thing about that was it had a wide angle lens in it. No, I tell you what, it was a macro lens as well, so you could actually get a bit closer on that. I think down to perhaps about 60 centimeters or something with that. Somebody can probably correct me if they know more than that. But it was a 28mm lens, and all of the rest of them had 35mm focal length lenses. Other than that, there's not a lot really to write home about. I would say, okay, this one's seen better days, but I would say that in general, the build quality of it isn't that brilliant, to be fair. If you have a look at the back here, you have this manual winder, which is very reminiscent of the kind of disposable cameras that you used to get at weddings and stuff back in the 80s and 90s. It's not it's not a high precision bit of kit. Inside the back, I think maybe you have to take the flash off to be able to have a look inside. So if you pop that open, we can actually have a look inside the camera. There we go. Have to shut that first, I think. So, inside the camera, it is all fairly ordinary looking. The one thing to check with all of these cameras is the light seal around here. You see there's a kind of like a foam thing that goes around the outside of the door and inside this little kind of groove here, so that it's light sealed when it's all shut back up again. And if you don't pay attention to that, it can put light leaks onto your picture. So I mentioned it's a very, very small camera, and I just wanted to give you an idea of just exactly how small that is. In context of Olympus, you may well know that in the 1970s they came out with a rangefinder called the Olympus RC 35RC, and that was billed at the time as being the world's smallest rangefinder camera. And it was indeed tiny, and we can have a look at one here and compare it to the RC. To compare it to the XA2, and we can actually sort of see the difference and just see exactly how small this little camera is. So if you look at the two side by side, you can see that the XA2 is actually smaller in pretty much all directions compared to the 35RC. So it really is a very tiny camera indeed. We will come on to this in a future episode, but in terms of lenses, this also has the Zuiko lens. It's a 42mm lens as opposed to the 35, so it's a slightly longer focal length. Not that 7mm makes a huge difference, but the fundamental difference on here, it's got a 2.8 lens, so it's a faster lens that lets in more light and a shallower depth of field than the XA2, which had the f3.5 lens. The original XA, the rangefinder, did have the 2.8 lens, and there is a huge debate, as there is with many things online, about which one was actually sharper. Some people believe that the 3.5 was actually sharper, but in either case, it's a Zuiko. You cannot buy a bad Zuiko lens. They are all fantastic. So that's it for the XA2